Hello, I'm Esther Gitu. It's Wednesday, March 16th. This is Africa 54.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiyy makes an urgent plea to the U.S. Congress for more help in fending off a Russian invasion. The World Food Program sounds the alarm on the Horn of Africa's drought. And exciting news for journalists on all platforms in the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. The Google News Initiative wants your ideas.
Russian forces continued their airstrikes and artillery bombardment on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, on Wednesday. The attacks are taking a heavy toll on civilians and the places where they live. And NATO ministers gathered in Brussels Wednesday to discuss both the immediate consequences of Russia's invasion and its long-term efforts to strengthen NATO's collective defense. As Russian forces assault civilian targets across Ukraine, firefighters battled fires at residential buildings in Kyiv. Emergency workers worked to put out a number of fires as smoke rose from large apartment buildings. Debris was seen scattered on the street next to heavily damaged parked cars. The Ukrainian State Emergency Service says the destruction is a result of Russian shelling on the area. Around half of Kyiv's 3.4 million residents have fled, and some are spending nights sheltering in subway stations. Ukrainian officials estimate that more than 2,500 residents have been killed in the fighting, and at least 200,000 are in urgent need of evacuation. Russia denies that it is targeting civilians. The Polish Commissioner for Human Rights says that the now calm situation at the border with Ukraine could become worse if Russia attacks Lviv, western Ukraine's major city. Martin Vyachek says the refugee influx is under control, but if Lviv gets attacked, the wave of people fleeing the war can become stronger. Nearly 3 weeks into the war, the number of Ukrainians fleeing abroad stands at 3 million, based on data from the United Nations Refugee Agency. All right, so we'll continue. Ukraine's president on Wednesday urged U.S. lawmakers to do more to protect his nation amid a 3-week onslaught by Russian forces, evoking some of the worst traumas of American history and asking Congress and President Joe Biden to give military assistance and impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine's stands and besieged skies.
Right now, the destiny of our country is being decided. The destiny of our people, whether Ukrainians will be free, whether they will be able to preserve their democracy. Russia has attacked not just us, not just our land, not just our cities. It went on a brutal offensive against our values, basic human values. It threw tanks and planes against our freedom, against our right to live freely in our own country, choosing our own future.
For more perspective on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy's speech to the U.S. Congress, let's go live to Capitol Hill, where VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson is standing by. Catherine, what are the key takeaways from Zelenskiy's address?
Well, I think we absolutely have to talk about his request for a no-fly zone, which is not a new request, but it was really important for him to get that through directly to the members of Congress sitting and watching that speech, watching him address them remotely. He reiterated that call, but he also acknowledged that that's going to be very difficult for the U.S. and its allies to instate, something that U.S. President Joe Biden has already said is not going to happen for fears that that would provoke open conflict between the U.S. and Russia. Recognizing that reality, Zelensky said that he would instead need a lot of defensive aid missiles, Stinger missiles, airplanes, as much defensive aid as the U.S. can provide. And he really drew some comparisons between the situation in Ukraine right now and situations that the U.S. has faced in its history, really making an emotional appeal to U.S. lawmakers, saying that this is Ukraine's version of Pearl Harbor or the September 11th attacks, and that while Ukraine is fighting for its freedom, it is also fighting for the freedom of everyone around the world, and that's what's at stake here, and that's why the U.S. Congress needs to consider more lethal defensive military aid.
Catherine, how are lawmakers reacting to his address?
Well, I think we can't underestimate the impact of that video that Zelenskyy showed. And it was in a very effective montage comparing the peaceful cities of Ukraine from just a few weeks ago to the destruction that Russian aggression has wreaked now. We saw a lot of graphic video of young children, of babies dying because of those Russian bombs. And when U.S. lawmakers came out to the stakeout afterwards, they were telling me and other reporters that it was really impactful, that while they understood the situation in Ukraine before that, seeing that emotional video really made a difference and really made them realize that this is going to be a red line conflict, something that we need to stop before it gets even worse, before chemical weapons get involved like Russia used in Syria, or possibly they also raised the possibility of nuclear strikes. They said that this is something that U.S. lawmakers need to combat before it gets even worse. And I really sensed a bipartisan unity among those lawmakers to say we need to act now, not just in the next few days, but in the next few hours.
So, Catherine, looks like there will be a vote pretty soon. Thank you so much for your reporting, Catherine, on the reaction at the Hill. And now joining us from the city of Lviv in Ukraine is Associated Press global correspondent Philip Crowther. Philip, what's the latest from where you are?
Well, look, we have some news in from Mariupol, that besieged city in the southeast of the country. Yesterday, Tuesday, almost 30,000 people were able to get out. They were evacuated from this terrible situation, a 10-day-long siege already underway there by Russian forces. And today we've also seen footage that gives us a reminder of why exactly it was so needed for people to get out. One of our colleagues in Mariupol filmed a hospital in that city with the injured coming in, but also the bodies of those who didn't make it lying in the hallways outside the hospital as well. The body of a baby also seen in that footage. Quite horrible stuff, but a reminder of what exactly is happening on the ground in Mariupol and, in fact, also in other cities in Ukraine. Now, the capital city, Kiev, is being attacked, but no combat in the streets at this point. Artillery strikes, essentially, are what are hitting residential areas in Kiev because Russian soldiers have not yet been able to make their way into the city. So these are attacks from afar, essentially. One piece of shrapnel from an artillery strike hit a 12-story building. It was then engulfed in flames. There were 2 victims, according to the emergency services, though they didn't specify whether these were deaths or injuries. But this is becoming a bit of a regular occurrence in the capital city. Artillery strikes on residential areas.
Philip, what do we know about the latest round of talks between Kiev and Moscow?
Well, there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope, it would appear, despite what we heard from Russian President Vladimir Putin just a few hours ago, saying that the operation, what he calls a military operation, is in fact, of course, an invasion of Ukraine, is going successfully, in his words, everything going according to plan. But it's not, of course. Russian advances are not as fast as Russia might have wanted them to be, and indeed the Russian losses are much higher than Russia was expecting. Hence maybe the need from Russia as well for an agreement with Ukraine. And that's where we're seeing a few little avenues developing. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying that there was a business-like spirit in these negotiations now, and that they were discussing a possible neutral status for Ukraine in the future. Now, there are many different ways of establishing a neutral status. A neutral military status in this case would probably mean Ukraine not joining NATO and not having foreign military bases on its territory, something that right now would seem relatively unlikely for Kiev to accept. Those talks, though, are ongoing. Russians and Ukrainians are talking, and as long as that happens, there is a possibility that there could be an actual peace agreement in the near future.
Philip, thanks. Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther reporting live from Lviv, Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to unveil on Wednesday $800 million in new aid to Ukraine that will push the total amount of assistance announced by the U.S. during the past week to $2 billion. The White House has announced that President Biden will head to Brussels next week to coordinate deterrence and defense efforts with NATO allies. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports.
The United Nations says that more than 3 million people have now fled Ukraine as of the 20th day of the Russian invasion. The White House, meanwhile, announced President Joe Biden will head to Europe to continue consultations with allies.
The President will travel to Brussels, Belgium later this month, where he will join an extraordinary NATO summit on March 24th to discuss ongoing deterrence and defense efforts in response to Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine, as well as to reaffirm our ironclad commitment to our NATO allies.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiyy raised eyebrows with a video posted Tuesday.
Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We understand that. We are adequate people. We have heard for years that the doors were open, but we also heard that we could not join. It's a truth, and it must be recognized. I am glad that our people are beginning to understand this and rely on themselves and our partners who help us.
NATO has rebuffed Russian demands that Ukraine be excluded from joining the defensive alliance. The United States contends that Russia has asked China for military and other support for its invasion of Ukraine. Washington has asked China not to help Moscow continue its assault on civilians. China's foreign ministry spokesperson responded Tuesday.
We strongly urge the U.S. not to harm Chinese interests when handling relations with Russia. China and Russia will continue to carry out normal economic and trade cooperation in the spirit of mutual respect, equality, and benefit.
China is walking a fine line on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, supporting its ally Moscow verbally and materially, but is clearly not pleased with the way things are going. Michael Kimmage of the German Marshall Fund told VOA.
I think it's evident that China does not like this war, that it finds the war too radical and too disruptive for China's good. And in that sense, China will be looking out very much for its own interests.
Ukraine's President Zelenskyy is set to address a joint session of the United States Congress on Wednesday. Experts note there is overwhelming bipartisan support for Kyiv on Capitol Hill.
He's got a great deal to say at the moment. He's a charismatic figure. He's become overnight a global political leader, and I think he knows that the U.S. Congress is among his most important audiences. They will be pushing on sanctions. They may well be pushing on the delivery of various weapon systems to Ukraine.
Experts note that Zelenskyy's address to the British Parliament had a significant impact and moved some members to tears. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
To West Africa now, where gunmen on Tuesday killed 11 Nigerian security members, including 7 policemen and 4 vigilantes in attacks in central and northwestern Nigeria, in the latest violence blamed heavily on criminal gangs. Recently, attacks have intensified despite military attempts to drive bandits out of their camps in forests. In the first attack on Tuesday, scores of attackers stormed a police station in central Niger State's Magama district, triggering a gunfight with policemen and local militia, according to Niger police. The World Food Programme is warning that the Horn of Africa region is facing its driest conditions since 1981. 4 million Somalis will struggle to find food if rains do not fall in April. David Doyle has more.
Tens of thousands now live on the outskirts of Bardir, having fled the devastation wrought by Somalia's worst drought in more than 4 decades. Among them is 61-year-old Habiba Ma'aw Iman. It hasn't rained on her farm in 2 years. Her crops have failed, her animals are dead. She says she's been here for 158 days without food or shelter, and that every day she goes to the town to knock on doors and beg so her children can eat. The Horn of Africa region is facing its driest conditions since 1981, according to the UN's World Food Programme, after 3 consecutive rainy seasons failed. Most of those in need of help near Bardir are women and children, said WFP Country Director El Kadir Daloum Mahmoud.
The food security situation is so poor. Those people have lost everything behind them, that is livestock or agriculture, and they came completely in need of food, shelter, water, health care, everything they want.
Much rests on the success of rains this year. If they don't materialize in April, the WFP says more than 4 million Somalis will struggle to find food. 1.4 million children under 5 could be acutely malnourished by the end of the year. But the signs are not promising. Global weather patterns indicate the rains are likely to fail again this year, according to the Famine Early Warning System Network, which warns that the region could be heading for its worst drought on record.
David Doe of Reuters filed that report. Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Still to come, the latest Basketball Africa League highlights. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on Straight Talk Africa.
Early in the game, Rwanda's Fila finds Thomas Jr., who gets the ball to Walker for 2.
Oh, nicely done, Walker.
Fila passes to Walker for 2 more.
Fila, Walker again.
Fila this time gets it to Ndizeye, who finds Walker and passes to Mpoyo for a nice dunk.
Oh, my word, Mpoyo!
Early in the game, Rwanda's Fila finds Thomas Jr., who gets the ball to Walker for 2.
Oh, nicely done, Walker.
Fila passes to Walker for 2 more.
Fila, Walker again.
Fila this time gets it to Ndizeye, who finds Walker and passes to Mpoyo for a nice dunk.
Oh,
Season 2 of the Basketball Africa League is here. After a historic inaugural season, 12 national champions from across the continent are ready to compete for the 2022 BAL Championship. From March 5th to March 28th, tune in and follow the BAL on Voice of America. 54 countries, 12 teams, 1 continent, but only 1 champion. Game on.
Coming soon, but it's time now for our technology report, and joining us now is Africa 54's Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Thank you. Are you a journalist, a freelancer, a blogger, or a media house or publisher in the Middle East, Turkey, or Africa looking to thrive in the digital age? The Google News Initiative, a global platform that empowers news organizations, is looking to build a stronger future for journalism. They are giving up to $150,000 in grant money for the best idea. I spoke to Ludovic Blecher, head of Google News Initiative based in Paris, to learn more about this competition. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here, so thanks so much.
You are running a very interesting initiative, the Google News Initiative, an innovation that is trying to solicit ideas from journalists around the world. But this time around, you're focusing on Africa. Let's start there.
The idea behind this initiative goes way beyond funding. It's all about kind of offering a forcing function for journalists, media entrepreneur, product person that want to design, think, try new things, and build the future of how news is distributed, how news is monetized, to kind of test new things and new ideas. It requires, first of all, time and potentially money, and that's all the purpose of this initiative. So we launched under the umbrella of the Google News Initiative, this global program called GNI, Google News Initiative Innovation Challenges. We say challenges because it's a global program, but it's run at a regional level. And it's a completely open approach. What we've learned over years is that good idea can come from anyone, anywhere, any type of company, and any type of function in the ecosystem.
Let me do a quick follow-up. You say that it's open to everyone. What do you mean? Who is eligible? Can anybody in the journalism or publishing industry or content creation apply for this grant?
This call for project is open in the Middle East, in Africa, and in Turkey. Countries from the region are eligible to apply. And in terms of type of news innovators, look, it could be a legacy player with print and digital operation. It could be an online-only publisher. It could be a freelancer, a new startup. It could also be some academics or network of investigative journalists or network of fact checkers, right?
For people out there who want to apply for this initiative, what should they be looking out for?
Good ideas are coming from anyone, anywhere, and that should be acknowledged, right? Second, we are pushing for innovation, but in no way we want to define what innovation is, because innovation actually really depends of your starting point, right? And what we've learned is that you can innovate using technology, but innovation are not necessarily tied to technology. It can be just a new way to talk to your readers. So a tip for applicant is, please explain us, why do you think your project is innovative for you? Think from a reader standpoint and explain things also from a reader and consumer standpoint. That is probably a good tip.
What is in it for Google? Why is Google doing this?
We think that the stimulation component is extremely important to give everyone a chance to just test new things, try to engage their audience in different ways. We are very optimistic about the future of news, about the future of journalism. It has never been as needed as it is today. The distribution model are changing. All that is challenged on a day-to-day basis. So that's the purpose of this kind of initiative.
How much money is involved if one was to win or to be selected?
The cap for Google funding is $150K US, and we fund up to 70% of the total budget.
You have a background in journalism. You've been practicing journalism as a journalist, not as somebody working for Google or as somebody who is running this program. What kind of tips would you give them?
Of course, a good question. And that's why I said at some point, maybe you remember, try to be in the user's shoes and not just in your own. It's not just about what you want to achieve because you are news passionate, but also how can you serve better the audience, surprise us, right? And don't think that innovation has always to be something super complicated. That's not the case. It has to be something taken from a different angle, from a different standpoint. So explain us, why do you think it's innovative?
On that note, thank you so much for your time, Ludovic.
Thank you so much, Paul.
That was Ludovic Blisha, head of Google News Initiative based in Paris. And that's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Paul, thanks. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for another Tech Report right here on Africa 54. In BL News, Rwanda Energy Group defeated Club Ferroviario de Beira of Mozambique 94-89 on Tuesday to earn their fourth win. Morocco's Saleh punched their ticket to the Basketball Africa League playoffs while sending Duke of Senegal home after beating the hosts 91-86 in Dakar. Here's VOA's Jackson Vunganyi with the highlights.
Early in the game, Rwanda's Filer finds Thomas Jr., who gets the ball to Walker for two.
Oh, nicely done, Walker.
Filer passes to Walker for two more.
Filer, Walker, Walker again.
Filer this time gets it to Ndizeye, who finds Walker and passes to Mpoyo for a nice dunk.
Oh, my word, Mpoyo!
Ndizeye attempts to pass to Nshobozwa, but Biera's parry steals, but not for long before Nshobozwa gets his hand on it. And then Biera's Ubise saves it and scores. Up by 3 in the third, Rex Thomas Jr. finds Filer, who passes to Mpoyo, who dunks it in.
Nicely done, look at that. Drained by Axel and Mpoyo.
Biera's Nurmamade hits a 3 to get his team the lead by 1 with under 4 minutes left in the third. Shobozwa ties the score at 60 with a 2-point shot.
Beautiful score as well.
4 minutes to go in the game. Rex Thomas Jr. finds Shobozwa for 3, pushing their lead to 6.
Shobozwa!
Biera's Numamade passes to Bise, who scores with a little over a minute left.
Oh, it's delightful.
Shobozwa scores 2 more for his team as Rwanda wins in the second to last game of the Sahara Conference. Stoglin collected a rebound and raced across the court for a quick basket.
Oh, he's just a joy to watch.
A steal by Saleh El Masbahi ended with a nice layup to keep the Moroccan team ahead by 2 towards the end of the second quarter. Dukes Diallo hit a jump shot to keep the Senegalese team close.
Great score, isn't it? Look at that.
Kudu fed Naja down low for a layup to stay up by 4 points.
It's a lovely little layup that was from...
Duke's fast break ended up with a layup by Ali to bring Duke within 1.
Cyril Bar.
Saleh Naja steals the ball from Ali, passes to Stoglin, whose 3-point attempt hits the front of the rim, but Masbahi was right there for a putback. Haruna scores with a dunk to keep Saleh ahead by a point.
Oh, with a massive statement down the right side.
Stoglin hits another basket to keep the Moroccan side ahead halfway in the fourth quarter.
Stoglin, he is... How does he do it? He's like
Stoglin makes a long pass to Massa for an easy bucket.
Massa for 2.
Massa returns the favor, passing to Stoglin for a 3-pointer.
Stoglin, oh!
Saleh Mas loses the ball to Dukes Diop, who passes to Ali, who passes to Diakite for a layup, but it was a futile effort for the Senegalese team.
And that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa 54.